Remember, I had a conversation with a man years ago. It was really quite interesting. He was an independent filmmaker from Newfoundland. He's very charming. He's a really funny guy to talk to. And he was actually thinking about making a movie about confession, but I'll talk more about that later. But what he wanted to share with me, he's saying that, he had an interesting backstory. He had been chosen the valedictorian for his university graduation. King's College in part of Dalhousie in Halifax. This is back in the 80s, and he kind of played it up a bit. He's a bit of a character, so he kind of made fun of the staff and some of the traditions of the school. I think there was even a little toast that was part of it. Now, he used in his film, he actually made a film about this, and I saw it, and he had the long kind of mullet hair. Dude, he was a dandy, and he thought he was hitting it out of the park. Not everybody thought so. He got some pushback, I think, a little bit from the staff, I think more so from his other students, and they basically said, well, you ruined our graduation. It's not all about you. And it really crushed him. It was never his intention, but he carried that for a long time. Then 25 years later, 25 years of that, he's invited back to the graduation thing, one of those anniversaries for the university. And he has to make this choice, do I go back and face the music? And he did, and he made a film about it. And that's what he was sharing with me. It's quite interesting. I'm going to tell you the end of that later on, but can you imagine doing that? So every day of your life, you feel like a little bit ashamed or guilty, and of course, he's an independent filmmaker. He has to talk all the time. He has to pitch ideas and stories, and he never spoke again publicly without thinking about it and wearing it to some degree. It's the thing that can happen to us. When we have a negative experience in our life, or even something we don't get the support or the affection or the affirmation that we need, there's a wounding that can take place. And that wound leads to a belief that I'm not good enough, or I have to work harder than everybody else, or I'll never measure up. I don't fit in. And that leads to a vow. Well, I'm going to, or I will never. Anybody ever experienced one of those? I think we all have them. It's part of the blindness that we bring into this world, and often this is what we share with others. We don't mean to. We just had a conference this week, and one of the things the presenter said, wounds that are not healed will always be projected. If you don't deal with it, you're going to share it. It's just kind of one of those principles. And I don't know if that's all true, but I think it is something to that. And I think we're seeing it in our culture in the times that we're in. Wasn't quite sure how I was going to talk about, any things going on the Hill today. I don't know how I was going to work that in or what I wanted to say about that. But I at least wanted to acknowledge that it's a thing. I was away all week. I missed most of this, and we were doing some long-term planning with the community. So I was away at a cottage, and I was coming back Friday, what's going on? I kind of knew the general thing, but I didn't really realize how big it had grown. But there's been a lot of those over the last few years, and I just think it's kind of in the air. We're all tired of this. And maybe we've gotten a little cranky, or something about social media that allows that to happen, and there's a sense of the problem is those people these people in this pew right here, or those over there, the cheap seats, right? They're always causing trouble. But it's so easy to do that. And when you catch yourself, again, what's the wound? What's the blindness? Why am I missing in other people? Now, believe it or not, I really did think of the gospel first. This is a continuation of what Father John was preaching on last week, and it's really literally the picture that's behind me on the wall. It's part of why I love that picture. Jesus is pointing to the scriptures and himself and saying, Isaiah, the blind see, the deaf hear, the mute speak, the lame walk, and the poor have the good news preached to them. And I am the fulfillment of that. And I am the one you've been waiting for. And they're like, I don't think so. No, they just can't swallow it. I want to quote here from at the time, Father Robert Barron, now Bishop Robert Barron. He talks about something that's very unique to Christianity, that in most religions have a sort of a movement where the people sacrifice something of themselves or something of their gifts or what they have in order to appease God. You can almost imagine that we sacrifice in order to appease our God. But in Christianity, everything is reversed. Our God has come to be with us, Christmas, and he's going to sacrifice himself, Easter, so that we would be appeased. And that's going to require from us then an acceptance of that truth. And this is what he's beginning to set up. He said, you have an idea in your head of how this is going to go. It's going to look a little different. Are you willing to believe? And we kind of get the answer that no, it's not the way it's going to be. I will not change. Do not ask me to see other than what I see. And this is the challenge. But I don't think it's just 2,000 years ago in the time of Christ. I think it's always been a challenge for us. And it often does trace its way back to a lack of love or an experience that we've had or a bitter root judgment that we've made. What Christ wants to do is free us from that. We don't have to have this blindness. Our eyes can be opened. We can see the world for what it is and others for their potential. I want to finish off that story now. Remember this young guy going back to the university? And he does a really nice job. I wish I could give you a copy of the film he made, but he gave me a link and only I could watch it. And it's not a big movie or anything, but it's beautifully set up because the big confrontation is when he finally goes and sits down with his old professor. And this is like the head of the school, and he's all dressed in his robes, and it's a big confrontation. He kind of half apologizes and said, I'm really sorry. I know I was not my best. I failed to represent my classmates. It's quite a rehearse. He's been working on this for 25 years. There's a pause, and the professor kind of smiles a little bit and looks at him and says, well, I do remember you. But I got to be honest, I go to a lot of graduations, and I hear a lot of speeches, and I really can't remember yours. For 25 years, this guy's been carrying this guilt and shame, and nobody even remembers the speech. And it kind of ends, it's sort of I don't know, heaven, but it's like, he and his buddies are hanging back in the school pub, right? And these middle-aged people, a little less hair, a little more everything else. And they're having fun, and they're with their friends again. And it's like a sense of being free. You don't have to carry the shame. And whatever we imagine God to be and whatever we thought religion would do for us and whatever baggage we bring into this, come to Christ. Believe that he knows you, that he loves you. And the whole point of this wasn't for us to sacrifice to appease him. He wants to sacrifice and appease you. That you would be free. That you would know love. That you would not carry heavy burdens. That you could be forgiven and set free. So friends, whatever you're bringing tonight, whatever burden you have, whatever sorrow, we all have something. And most of us have more than one. Pray that Jesus would move in your heart, in your life, that you would experience the love and joy that is Christ, that you would feel that healing of that wound. You would receive that thing that you needed, that affirmation, that love, whatever maybe thing that happened. And we just want to pray that the love of Christ would go there, and that would be lifted and removed, and it wouldn't have that same element of weight or shame. That collectively we would come to express that in our culture and our world. Christ is risen. It makes a difference. And he still lives among his people. Amen?